Hey everyone, welcome back to Launch Codes Football. My name is Chris.
And my name is Chelsea.
Welcome back to another episode. We've got episode 30 here going on week 12. We are way over halfway of the season, and a lot of teams are looking like they're legit, and a lot of teams are certainly looking like it's a disappointing year for them to start out. So, Chelsea, how are you doing today?
You know, I'm living. We out here.
You sound real thrilled to be out here.
No, I am thrilled. I'm happy to be here. I am. I am happy to be here.
I got you. No,
This is
okay.
just know, guys, that this is going to be a particularly entertaining episode because not only am I going to rant, but so is Chris.
I don't know if I
So
have
you guys
anything
should
left
really
to
find
rant.
this to be entertaining, honestly. You're welcome.
We'll see how it goes. But anyways, I'm excited for today's episode, and hopefully you guys are too. Hopefully everyone's out there staying safe and having a good week so far. But let's dive right into it. Week recap, week 12 of the NFL season. So Chelsea, do you want to start us off with your first topic?
I mean, I guess if you're going to make me. Well, I suppose that it's time to discuss the game that was the Bucs Colts. Man, this is our third loss this season that we should have not lost. Like, we have 3 games, this game, the Ravens game, and one of the Titans games that we most certainly should have won. We should be 9-3 or 9-6 right now. Actually, no, we should be 9-3. We should be 9-3 right now. And we're 6-6, and we're a lot better than 6-6. Like, I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast don't watch Colts games, so it would kind of be unrealistic for me to expect you guys to know what I'm talking about, because honestly, you probably don't, because let's just admit, I mean, there's just not a lot of Colts fans, especially in North Carolina, where we come from, right? But, man, I was just disappointed. Like, I'm mostly just disappointed. Like, I'm just so disappointed. I can't even say anything, you know? That's just how it is. You know, there are a lot of different people giving a lot of different crap to a lot of different parts of this team, mostly Frank Reich, for not properly utilizing Jonathan Taylor, which at first I was 110% on that train, right? Because Jonathan Taylor is the best running back right now in the league. Yes, it's debated, but statistically speaking, if you look at it, he is. Now, he had 8 rushes in the first half, right? Which, I mean, isn't great, but if you double that, that's 16 for the game, and that's not bad, right? I mean, that's probably average for the amount of carries a running back gets, per game. Except he didn't run the ball a single time in the third quarter when we had the giant lead where we needed to burn clock. So I think if Frank Reich is going to take heat for any part of his game planning, it's going to be that, not running Taylor at all in the third quarter. But at the same time, I mean, statistically speaking, the Bucs are one of the hardest teams in the league to run against, right? So if you're going to properly game plan, like, it doesn't matter how good your player is. One really good player up against 4 really good players just doesn't equate, right? I mean, Jonathan Taylor is good. No one's going to deny that. But Jonathan Taylor was literally running right into the arms of Vita Vea the entire game, who's literally 400 pounds and is like 3 of me wide, right? So, I mean, like, yes, I think that Frank Reich should have used Jonathan Taylor more, especially in the third quarter. But for people to expect it to be a run-heavy offensive game, it just wasn't realistic if you look at the way that the Bucs defense operates. Like, they're really good against the run. I mean, they played the Patriots earlier this year. The Patriots couldn't do squat against them in the running game. And the Patriots are good at running the ball, right? So are the Colts. I mean, there's a reason that Frank Reich game planned the way that he did. And if you watch the game, like, I'm not talking about the highlights, right? I'm talking about the game. If you watch the game film, Carson Wentz was obliterating their defense with his passing. Seriously, he was. He was absolutely destroying their cornerbacks and their safeties and their linebackers. I mean, honestly, we probably could have scored more points in the first half if we had just decided to not drop some balls, right? But it's just disappointing. Like, really, the thing that killed us in this game was turnovers more than anything else. I mean, Naheem Hines fumbling on the kick return killed us, right? Eric Fisher deciding to be incompetent and giving up a blindside sack forced fumble. Like, that can't happen. Like, one of the interceptions that went through, like, that can't happen, right? Went through an interception at the end of the game too, but it was a Hail Mary, so I don't really count that, right? But there was one more. I don't even remember what it is, but there was one more. It's just frustrating. Like, I keep seeing posts that are like, hey, the Colts aren't a playoff team because playoff teams close out games. No, I would not argue that. I think if you look at teams that are making the playoffs in the AFC, there are teams that have blown leads. Every team has blown a lead, I'm pretty sure, or at least come close. I would argue that the Colts, because they blow leads, doesn't make them not playoff caliber. It makes them not Super Bowl caliber, right? If you're gonna win a Super Bowl, you can't do that, right? I don't think the Colts are gonna win the Super Bowl, even with how they've been playing, how they blew out the Bills, right? How they've been doing other things. Like, I don't think that they're gonna win a Super Bowl. I don't. But I think they're gosh darn good enough to make it to the playoffs if we can just close out some games, right? And stop doing dumb things. Like, we need people to catch the ball, right? We need to not turn it over stupidly, right? Like, those things are all problematic. So if those things don't happen, we win, right? We should not be blowing 17-point leads, right? That's just unacceptable. But luckily this week we have a bounce back game against the Texans, who are notoriously bad. But surprisingly, the Texans always play us well every year. Doesn't matter who they have. They could have Deshaun Watson. They could have Davis Mills. Doesn't matter who they have. They always play us well. And I guess it's just a divisional thing, right? Just a divisional rivalry that, is hard every game. But I mean, let me give credit where credit is due, though. Like, Leonard Fournette went off. We had neither of our starting safeties for this game. And Tom Brady really didn't do much of anything outside of using Gronkowski and Leonard Fournette. Like, really, the defense stifled everyone else. So it happens when you give up 4 touchdowns to Leonard Fournette. I mean, he had 17 attempts for 100 yards. That's not even spectacular. I mean, getting 100 yards is good. Like, that's the goal. But it's not like he was 17 carries for 200 yards, He was just efficient. 17 carries, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a passing touchdown, right? So it's just, we shut down the part that we thought would kill us, and the part we didn't think was going to kill us killed us, But more so than that, it was mostly the turnovers. It was just frustrating. But I do still think that we can make the Super Bowl. I don't think we can make the Super Bowl. I think we can make the playoffs. If we win games, if we close out games, we can beat anyone. It's just a matter of doing so. So hopefully they get back on the winning train this week against the Texans, who hopefully throw us like 7 interceptions. So, I can dream. There was a lot of talk too about Jonathan Taylor potentially winning MVP, right? Which I think is still possible, but I think pretty much everyone knows that the MVP is a quarterback award. So if they gave it to someone that wasn't a quarterback, I think that they would have to be magnificent the entire year. Not that Taylor hasn't, but, last week only having, 12 carries for 80 some yards and a touchdown. Like, yeah, that's good. And yeah, that's better than average, but he'll probably have to be spectacular the rest of the year to have a shot. Not that he can't. I just think that the quarterbacks, they're just going to give it to a quarterback. That's how it is. It's a quarterback award. Like, no matter if people want to admit it or not, like, it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance I think Jonathan Taylor could get it. because he has been so spectacular and in a lot of ways has kind of put the offense on his shoulders. And
Hmm.
I think if the Colts can find a way to just, this, while losing to Tampa sucks, I don't think it's the worst thing, definitely. You guys were 1-4, now you've really turned it around, I think. Losing this game isn't a huge deal, I think. But I think if the Colts go out and make a good playoff run, end up double-digit wins and in the playoffs, I think there's an argument that Jonathan Taylor could make that run for MVP and could be a legitimate candidate. I think there's still some others out there. You are right. It's hard to beat a quarterback. It's hard to beat Justin Herbert or Mac Jones or, whoever else may come
Kirk
out of the
Cousins.
NFC. Mm-hmm.
Kirk
So,
Cousins is like 24 for 3. And no one talks about him because everyone thinks that he's bad still for some reason, which is not true.
it's because they're not winning as many games as people want to see, but the truth is it's not always on him.
Yeah, I mean, when Dalvin Cook hasn't played half the games this season and Justin Jefferson hasn't really done that much, I mean, what else is the dude supposed to do?
Fair enough.
Like
But
Justin Jefferson, don't get me wrong, he hasn't had a bad year, but when he's coming off that high of last year, where you just saw him dominate every single year to this year, you're like, dang, this year kind of sucks. And it doesn't even suck. It's just that his first year was so good.
yeah, I got you. Well, but anyways, thank you, Chelsea, for sharing about that, sharing about your pain. But next, we're going to go on to the Raiders versus the Cowboys. This is a big one. Big Thanksgiving game. As much as I don't like seeing the Cowboys every year on Thanksgiving,
Like
because
a rite of passage.
it is, I mean, as much as I don't like just that, because not because I hate the tradition, but it's just like the Cowboys could be winless going into Thanksgiving. They still get the Thanksgiving game. So it's kind of annoying. I mean, I still think the worst one is having Detroit on there, but that's besides the point. But what we want to talk about today is, I will admit, while, don't always love seeing the Cowboys there every Thanksgiving, they always do make the most interesting game, in my opinion. And so this game was exactly that for Thursday. It was the primetime game. It was one of the highest rated, I think it was the highest rated regular season game since 1990 something, which
I
is
believe it
crazy.
was, which
And
is like,
so,
it's not even like a marquee matchup.
I mean, it was a very close game, Cowboys being as good as they are this year, and the Raiders really desperately needing a win, and Raiders ended up coming out of this thing winning 36-33 in overtime, which really Dallas had them in overtime, if not committing a very bad penalty at the end. Um, but yeah, Dallas losing this game now drops to 7-5. So Chelsea, what do you think? Do you think that the Cowboys still have legitimate Super Bowl hopes, or is this loss kind of indicative to how the team is, and Mike McCarthy going on COVID now? Like, what do you think are their Super Bowl chances after this?
So, isn't this kind of what happens with the Cowboys every year, right? Like the Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott Cowboys, right? Like they start out like pretty good, and people are like, it's our year, it's our Super Bowl year. And then inevitably they crash and burn at the end. It just kind of feels like that's what's happening. Like that's what happens pretty much every year. So the fact that this is happening doesn't really surprise me. But what does surprise me is that the reason that it's happening is because in some of the games their offense is incompetent, which it shouldn't be. Like you have a decent O line, you have 4 or 5 caliber starting receivers, you have 2 starting caliber running backs, you have 2 starting caliber tight ends, and you have Dak Prescott. Like the game that they lost, or one of the games they lost, the Saints game, wasn't it like 13-9? Or not the Saints, the Chiefs. When they played the Chiefs, wasn't it like 13-9 or something super pathetic? Like people thought it was going to be a shootout. And it was like a defensive game. Like, dude, you have one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You have a top 10 running back. You have a couple probably top 20 receivers. Like, what are you doing? Like, come on, guys. The Cowboys are way too talented of a team to be blowing it away like this. Like the talent level on their team, they should be making a deep playoff run. Like, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I think it'll be like the Packers or something. But I could see them getting to, the second round of the playoffs. I don't think that they should miss the playoffs. If they somehow manage to blow this away and miss the playoffs, all you can do is laugh, and I have friends that are Cowboys fans and they're just watching these games and they're like, oh, we'll be fine. It happens. And then it happened again. They're like, oh, it'll still be fine. And then it happened again. And they were like, well, it's probably fine. And you like hear that little quiver of hesitancy in their voice, But they're way too good of a team for this to be happening. Like, no disrespect to the Raiders. The Raiders are a good team in their own right, but the Raiders have lost a starting defensive player, their number one wide receiver, and their head coach all in the same year. Like, they don't have the most talent-loaded team, and they're beating the Cowboys who do. Like, that just shouldn't be happening.
That's a good point.
And not that the Raiders are bad, and not that the Raiders can't sneak in a playoff spot, because I think that the Raiders definitely could. If they win the vast majority of their games to end the year, they could definitely sneak in as like a 7 seed. But with all of the turmoil the Raiders have been going through, they don't even have their coach, and they still managed to beat the Cowboys. I think a lot of it falls on the shoulders of Mike McCarthy, too. He's gotten crapped on a lot this year for some of his decision making and personnel decisions and in-game, choices that he's making. It's just like, you just kind of have to laugh. Like, I'm not a Cowboys fan in any right, but it's kind of sad. Like, the Cowboys are way too good for this to be happening to, and it happens every year. Like, I don't know what the deal is. Maybe they just get cold at the most inconvenient times during the year. Maybe that's just what it is. Maybe they're just really not that good and they're actually undercover trash. Maybe the team is good, but they always have bad head coaches who reduce them down to looking way worse than they actually are. I don't know. But this should not be happening. And if they somehow manage to blow themselves right out of the playoffs or lose in the first round of the playoffs, it's a loss of a season. Right? Because they have Super Bowl aspirations. And not that I think they can't make it up and still make a deep run, because I do think they have a talented team. But at this point, like, you're digging your own grave. Like, no one is doing it for you. Like, it's you. A lot of Cowboys fans are like, oh, we didn't lose that game. Like, on Instagram, like Cowboys fans that I follow are like, we didn't lose that game because our team is bad. We lost it because the refs are bad. Well, there were arguably questionable calls against the Cowboys in that game. The Cowboys had the same amount of penalties as the Raiders did. So if you want to get technical about penalties, perhaps don't put yourself in situations that give you a higher chance to commit worse penalties. Maybe just turn your head around and you won't get dumb offense or defensive interference penalties. That's literally all you have to do, is turn your head around and they don't call it. That's literally it. Or don't grab their jersey and hope that they don't see, and then they see and you're like, it was the tiniest grab ever. Why is this getting called? Well, the rule is if you grab the jersey, it gets called, right? So don't break the rules. Arguably some of the rules are dumb, but even still, like, you can't blame an entire loss on officiating. Every fan of every team in the history of sports has tried to do that, me included. And you just can't. It's just not logical.
Yeah, I think this game was interesting for a lot of reasons. You're right about one thing. I don't really think the refs blew this game, because there were a lot of penalties called in this game, which ended up making it go on for what felt like forever. I think one of the things that, if you're a Cowboys fan, that is concerning is that, it's not like you were dominating this game and then all of a sudden, you blew it. It wasn't really that. It was really the Raiders dominating a lot of this game. And then the Cowboys having a lot of just dry drives. They weren't able to score points on some of the drives they needed. But then all of a sudden they'd come down and score with Michael Gallup or something like that. A quick strike to him down the field, and suddenly they've scored in 2 minutes. It was really interesting. Maybe the Cowboys need to play with this offensive mind of, all right, it's time to go a little bit faster. Who knows? But I do think one thing that's concerning, it's not a huge deal because I think Dak is a very good quarterback. I think he's one of the best in this league. And I don't think this will be a huge concern, but something you do have to say is that if you're a Cowboys fan who thinks we lost this game because of the refs, I mean, I don't believe that because I mean, at the end there on a third down in overtime, Dak Prescott had a wide open receiver while rolling to his right, both of them going, and he missed the throw. He actually had a few throws this game that were just not good throws. And this is now 2 games, I'd say, where the Cowboys offense has proven to be as good as advertised. I mean, I believe they're good. They have the talent to be good. They've shown that they can put up a lot of points. But now you lost to a Chiefs defense that, in my opinion, isn't that good. They can play well at times, but are they good enough to hold you to single-digit points? They haven't proven that consistently this year. The Raiders have a good team, and so it doesn't really surprise me the fact that they won, but just more of the fact that the Dallas offense just really couldn't get things going. It was their run game, their passing game, just things weren't going. And while they did end up putting up 33 points, like, like the scoreboard does say, there were just times where I felt like the offense kind of died out and the defense had to do a lot. And the Cowboys defense is good, in my opinion. They're very good at making turnovers, but even then, you still had, I mean, Hunter Renfrow balled out in this game, over 100 yards catching, and, Darren Waller was not in this game. He actually went out with
I know.
injury.
He was on my
So,
fantasy team.
rip. Yeah.
Rip me. Yeah, they lost without arguably their best, or they won without arguably their best receiver, who isn't even a receiver. Like, if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you should be thinking, oh, let's double Hunter Renfrow because the next best is Zay Jones and make Zay Jones beat us.
Hey, credit to those Raiders receivers. They, in my opinion, did a good job. Like Renfrow,
I
Zay
agree.
Jones, that I think they played well. But I see what you mean. It's still like, it's just interesting. But I will say, Derek Carr had a heck of a game, and I'm impressed.
He's underrated.
With him. Yeah, I agree. I think he can be a franchise quarterback. If the Raiders fans aren't really happy with him, I don't really know. It's going to be hard to get a guy much better than him. But right now, I think for the Cowboys, they still have they still have a Super Bowl chance, but I think they're going to have to get it correct next week. I think or their next game, they have to be ready and they have to come out swinging. We know last time you beat Atlanta 43-3, but that was Atlanta. Let's see what you got next game. Can you come back from this game and prove that, hey, you know what, these last couple games against Denver and the Chiefs and the Raiders, you know what, they're flukes. They are not who we are. Come out and show the fans. Show them what you can do. So I'm very interested to see what the Cowboys do. And the Raiders, I mean, honestly, I still think the Raiders really needed this game, especially after dropping the game before this. So if I had to say which team needed this win more, I would say the Raiders. But the Cowboys need to get it together fast. Season is coming to an end. You got to get something together.
I agree. The Cowboys are a lot better team than what they are showing over the last couple of weeks. Or maybe this is how they've actually been, and now it's coming true. You really can't tell with these Cowboys, honestly. Some years it's one case, and some years it's the other. But I do still think that they're good enough to make a deep playoff run. It's just a matter of if they play like it.
All right. We'll see what happens by the end of the year. Shout out to Hunter Renfrow carrying my fantasy team, or being one of the people to carry my fantasy team to beat Chelsea this week. Just saying. But
don't talk about it.
I'm kidding.
It's because I lost Darren Waller, or Hunter Renfrow wouldn't have balled out.
I'm just going to be real. Shout out to anyone who's just barely making it in their fantasy league. I'm surviving off of waivers right now, and somehow, by the grace of God, it's working. I don't know how, but we're making it work. Every team I play against, their team plays ugly, so I don't know if it's just a me problem, but
well, technically, it would be a you solution.
I guess so. Just something about the Cleveland Big Macs, my big time fantasy name, just riles up, the other team's players. They don't know what to do.
Okay, but you have to briefly share the history behind that name.
Yes, I do. The Cleveland Big Macs were founded by the man himself, Vance McDonald. And, the 12-year-old inside of me said, haha, McDonald. So I called him the Big Mac. And believe me, the day that
You were not 12 years old, bro. You were
no,
19 and in college.
I know. That's why I said the 12-year-old brain, not
Oh, I thought you meant the 12-year-old body. I was like, bro,
no,
no, you
no,
were
no,
definitely in college.
no. And then my man Vance McDonald, I don't know. We just found him, and I was like, I have some affinity with this guy, and every time he did anything well, I was his biggest fan. When he, I mean, everything from the stiff arm to whenever he chased down that Bears player that was celebrating too early to run into the end zone, I was the biggest fan of those plays. So, Steeler Nation may not love him. There's very few people that Steeler Nation loves, but
That's fair.
anyways, a little bit of a history behind the fantasy team name. Anyways, let's go on to the next topic we got here. We have the
Oh, now it's time for you to rant. Aw.
It is what it is. I don't know if there's a rant left in me.
No, there
Panthers
is.
lose bad to Miami. It was just not a close game. Miami, in fairness to them, has been playing very good defense recently and has been playing better ball than they started out at the beginning of the year. I still don't believe they are a very good team yet, and I still think this is a disappointing year for Miami after what they had last year. But, they were able to force 3 turnovers out of this game. They made Cam Newton look bad. They made the whole team look bad, honestly. It was just a field day if you're a Miami fan. And maybe they can get something turned around for the end of the year. I don't know. If they can keep this win streak going, great. But as far as the Panthers side, I think the season's done. They had to win against Washington, and they didn't. And so people were saying, okay, but they've got to win against Miami, and they did not. And now there has been nothing but when it rains, it pours for the Panthers community. Christian McCaffrey goes out on IR for the rest of the year, which I'm a little bit suspect about. And I think it's just because they think they're done with the year, because the Panthers bye week is this week. And they, after Sunday, declared him done for the year on Monday, instead of giving him some time to look at like his injury and what was going on. Because if you look back at his injury earlier this year against Houston, he was given a few days before they eventually said, we're putting him on IR. So a little bit suspect there. I think that it's not to say that I don't think he's hurt. I just think that they're like, okay, our season's kind of done. We're not going to put him back in. And then they lost Dante Jackson today as well for the rest of the year. Dante Jackson has been a very controversial figure in the hot
I
topic
mean,
in the Panthers
he's
community.
not great. So,
well, it's interesting because Dante Jackson, 2 weeks ago, people were saying, extend this man. He's playing very well, and he was playing very well. But then the last 2 weeks against Terry McLaurin and Jalen Waddle, like, he hasn't looked that good. And a lot of people believe he's lost money, and there's a lot of people that are saying Dante Jackson will be done as a Panther because of all the other corners that they have, with J.C. Horn and Stephon Gilmore needing to be re-signed, and AJ Bouye. And so I personally see it. I don't see the Panthers putting a lot of money in Dante Jackson after this year. I don't think he's really a bad corner. There's just times where he's inconsistent. Some games he's really good. He's playing great coverage, which I know playing corner in the NFL is very difficult, because you can play great for 99% of the game, but then you mess up on one play and the receiver's gone and scored a touchdown on you. So I know that it's a very difficult position to play, but that's just part of the position. And I think he will get paid somewhere. Believe me, some team will take him, but I don't think Carolina will be that team to want to take him. But my take on this is season's done. Cam looked bad. I don't think it's all his fault like some people think. He definitely didn't play his best, but his offensive line is struggling. His run game is now down Christian McCaffrey. The defense at times is doing well, but then they mess up, and the special teams gets a blocked punt. It's just like there's just some days where it's just not your day. And I think that this was just not the Panthers' year. Coach Matt Rule is under a lot of fire right now. A lot of people want him gone. I don't think he will be gone after 2 years because he was signed to 7. And I think that if you fired him today, I don't think it really does you any favors. If they're gonna fire
You could
him,
make Joe Brady your head coach.
there's a lot of heat under Joe Brady. There's most Panther fans do not like, or a lot of them do not like him, and I don't really know if it's all his fault, but the truth is,
I mean,
that he came in being this high dream prospect, and so far the offense has taken a step back this year from what it was in 2020, and it wasn't even that good then. So honest.
yes, because it's obviously Joe Brady's fault that your O-line is literally nothing.
Yes, but
so that obviously means that all of the play calling and all the sacks are his fault because he's the one that's blocking. But like, obviously some of the fault falls on him. I'm not saying none of it does. But when you lose your top running back and you have no O-line and you have Sam Darnold as your cornerback, like, you don't have much to work with.
I can agree, but also I do think, I mean, earlier this year, Robbie Anderson was talking about it. He said Darius Slay, while Darius Slay had a very good game against us for the Philadelphia Eagles, Robbie Anderson was like Darius Slay admitted Robbie Anderson ran the same route the entire game. Who designs that? Joe Brady. The reason he was able to pick off 2 interceptions from Sam Darnold is because Joe Brady's sending him on the exact same route over and over. And I think, and it ended up costing them the game along with other things. I'm just saying, while I agree that it's not all his fault that we have a bad offensive line, that our quarterback has not played well. I don't know if he had a decision, or I don't know if he had a say in getting Sam Darnold or not. But the truth is, he hasn't been what, all the talking heads cracked him up to be. He might go back to college. He might not. Who knows? But I think that he has some really creative designs every once in a while, and he can make something good happen. Definitely. He's not just awful, but I think he has struggled along with the Panthers as a whole to find an offensive identity. They said earlier before the Giants game, we're going to be a run the football team. Sure enough, they don't run the football much through the year. They try something else, or they run it, and then they tried running it a few times against the Giants and then stopped. And then that whole run the football and play defense philosophy kind of died throughout the year. I don't know. It's a mix of things. It's a problem. And you got to wonder if Dave Tepper right now or what he's thinking. Is he thinking, all right, I still believe that this guy Rule and his squad can do this? Or is he thinking, I got to find somebody else? We don't know. I don't think we'll know to the end of the season, personally. But we're going to have to see where it goes. But yeah, that's kind of my take on that, is that I think after this loss, and especially how bad it was, I don't see the Panthers I don't see them going anywhere. They haven't proven that. And if they prove me wrong, cool. If they don't, well, I'm not surprised, because so far this year, it's just, they've shown they can't win close games. They're terrible.
You kind of have to fault the owner, though, too. Mm-hmm. Why would you sign an unproven college coach to a 7-year NFL contract when he's literally never coached in the NFL before in his life? Mm-hmm. Like, what kind of decision is that? Like, did you not think, oh, if this doesn't pan out, we're kind of screwed because we're going to owe him all this money? Like, why would you sign him to that long a deal? I would think 2 years, maybe 3 max, not 7. Whose idea was that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of Panther fans think right now. Our options back then were Matt Rule, Mike McCarthy, and Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs.
I would take the coordinator of the Chiefs.
Yeah, I personally think that they should have went with him, and if at least they went with Mike McCarthy, at least he's won a Super Bowl before. At least he's been a head coach for a while. Yes, a lot of people say that Rodgers carried him, but at least he's shown that NFL coaching experience. I understand that Matt Rule, he built up a Baylor program to be pretty good, and that does take a lot of work. But the truth is that the NFL is a very different product than college football. It's just different. And now there's a bunch of reports coming out that Matt Rule might be a coach at Notre Dame now, after today's news about Notre Dame's head coach leaving. So it's interesting. I mean, I think Tepper wanted to take a risk on a guy. And I mean, we're not the only franchise to do it. I mean, look at Jacksonville. They went with Urban Meyer, and so far that has not.
Which is also dumb.
Yeah, it's not been a good move so far. It's not to say that these college coaches can never work out, but it is very rare that they do. Even Nick Saban, I don't think, was that good in the NFL when he was here in Jacksonville. So I don't know. I think I don't blame fans for being frustrated with the hire. I'm not it's not personal. Don't hate the guy. I don't think people should hate them because of football. It's ridiculous. But none of the Panther fans, I think, or a lot of them, it's not like they just don't like him as a person, so they don't want him to be good. I want him to be good, but the truth is right now, it's not looking like it. And their coach, Ron Rivera, who was fired, is now he's made the playoffs with Washington, and with arguably, in a lot of ways, in my opinion, not as good of a lineup, but he's made it work. He made the playoffs last year, gave Brady a run for his money. And while they didn't start out that good this year, they have now won 3 in a row, I believe, beating the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. So I'm just like, man, good coaches can make it work. So we'll have to see what the Panthers do with any future moves they've got. It'll be an interesting offseason.
That was a controversial move too, right? Getting rid of Ron, which I can see both sides. The Panthers needed a new look, right? They just did. They needed a new scheme. They needed some new ideas and some newness in their team, right? And a lot of that comes with getting a new head coach. So I get the philosophy behind just wanting to start over. You can't really start over if you keep the same guy who's been there for 10 years. You just really can't. But at the same time, I think that Ron Rivera is a very good coach. I think you could have gotten rid of every other single coach on the Panthers team except him and probably had been decent. Because, the dude is proven to be able to win. He's a good coach. His players love him. Even his players that aren't his players love him. That aren't anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just been a lot of very questionable decision making with Carolina. Because remember, they were like, we're not the Carolina Christian McCaffreys. We're the Carolina Panthers. Well, you know what happened when Cam Newton got there? They became the Carolina Cam Newtons. And then Cam Newton let Carolina down because Cam Newton is not that good anymore. He's just not. He used to be good, and he still can be good now. But if people are expecting Cam Newton to come into Carolina and look like he did in 2015, that's just not going to happen. It's just not. No. Especially with this team, with how bad the O-line is. Yes, this is the healthiest he's probably ever been since he got to the league. But it doesn't matter if you literally have 1 second to throw the football.
Mm-hmm.
What Panthers fans really need to hope for is that Cam Newton doesn't get hurt because the O-line is incompetent. Naturally, it's nothing personal against the O-line. I'm sure they're great people or whatever, but what's going to happen? Cam Newton gets driven into the ground because his O-line can't block for more than 1 second, and then Cam Newton gets hurt. What does Carolina do then? Go back to Sam Darnold? You're just stuck in a cycle of mediocrity, right? And you have to get out of it somehow. It's not like you guys don't have potential. You do. But you also have injuries. Look at your defense, right? You had J.C. Horn, who's playing amazing. Foot injury, out for the year, right? So people are like, the secondary is bad. Yeah, the secondary is bad because J.C. Horn is out for the year. When J.C. Horn was in the secondary, it really wasn't that bad. And that was before you guys even had Gilmore. So if you guys had Gilmore and Horn, your secondary would be pretty dang good. But fair weather fans, being the way that they are, look at it and go, our secondary is bad. Why did we take J.C. Horn? It's not J.C. Horn's fault that his foot decided to quit on him. Like, I mean, there are other players too. I mean, you guys had, I believe, a linebacker who was out for a few games. You had Reddick out for a few games, right? And now you have Christian McCaffrey, who's been out for a few games and now is out for the year. I think you're on you've had at least 5 or 6 different O-line combinations over the course of this year, which doesn't help the situation. Your quarterback goes on IR. So yes, along with some of the questionable decision-making coming from the owner and the GM and the coaches and even the players, you can attribute some of it to injury. If you have a 100% healthy Carolina Panthers team that plays to its full potential, they really are not that bad. They really aren't. It's just a matter of how things have gone down this year, which is always the most disappointing way to see a season go, when you know you have potential and then it just goes down the drain because of whatever circumstance.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's the talk on them. So we're going to see how they respond after their bye week and in the off season. But let's go ahead and jump straight into our game picks. So the 3 games that we picked out this week are let's first start with the Cowboys at the Saints. So I'm going to go with the Saints in this one because, interesting fact, when the Saints play good teams like Tampa and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting now. Basically, the Saints have this track record this year of playing some good to decent teams. Oh yeah, the Green Bay earlier this year. They can beat good teams, but they struggle against the bad ones, like losing to Carolina. Now, part of that was all their coaches. And I know they did lose to Buffalo recently, and it was pretty bad. But I don't know. I think the Cowboys, if they're gonna do it, they're vulnerable right now, and I think I'm gonna give the Saints a shot on this one. Chelsea, what do you think?
I'm going to go with the Cowboys, not because I don't think that the Saints can upset them, because I think if the Cowboys don't win this game, they're pretty much done. I mean, obviously, if you lose this game, you still have a shot to make the playoffs, and you still have a shot to make a deep run, and they should. They should make the playoffs, and they should make a deep run. But let's just look at the Saints. No Michael Thomas. No Alvin Kamara. No Jameis Winston. Their O-line is good, right? They have a decent tight end, and they have a pretty good defense, generally speaking. But when Taysom Hill is your quarterback, you should not get out-dueled when you are Dak Prescott. You should not be losing offensively when their top 3 players are not playing. And if you do, there's something really wrong with your team. I mean, they haven't had Michael Thomas the whole year. That's nothing new. But they haven't had Kamara either the last couple of weeks. And I don't know if he's going to play this week or not. I haven't looked at it. But if he doesn't, and Simeon or Hill or whoever the heck else they have on their practice squad starts this game, I mean, you as the Cowboys with Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and CeeDee Lamb and everyone else that you have, you should not lose this game. If you lose this game, there is something wrong with your team, and it probably goes deeper than a little bit of play calling, right? Probably goes into some fundamentals, probably some, chemistry with the team. And if at this point you just don't have chemistry as a team, you're probably not going to make the Super Bowl. Which, I mean, you think about other teams, look at the Rams, right? The Rams have the most star-studded team in the entire league, but they have 0 chemistry. 0. And the reality is you can have as many stars on your team as you want, but if you have no chemistry, you're not going to win the championship, because the team that you're going to be playing is going to have that chemistry and they're going to use it against you. So, I mean, this is a must-win game for the Cowboys. If they do not win this game, I mean, I don't really know what else you can say. Just that it's a typical Cowboys season. I mean, I guess, but the Cowboys are way too good to lose this game. Even though it's in Louisiana, they should not be losing this game. And if they do, there's just something that is amiss.
Well, there you have it. So next we've got the Giants at the Dolphins. I'm actually going to go with the Dolphins on this one. I think they're playing better than the Giants have been recently. The Giants did just also win against the Eagles in a very, very close game that came down to the last throw, and painfully Philadelphia drops it with their first round pick wide receiver of last year, and every Philly fan rioted because they're like, Justin Jefferson would have caught it. But
They have a point.
I mean, I understand the frustration, but also you have to understand that these things can be kind of a crapshoot. You don't always know who's going to be that good. So either way, though, I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I think they have the better defense, and the Giants are just kind of they're not the cleanest football team. Not to say they can't win, but I don't know. I think just the Dolphins overall, since they've been playing so well defensively, I'm going to give this one to them over the Giants.
Yeah, for me, I just saw a headline that apparently Daniel Jones has a neck injury and might not play in this game, which if he doesn't play, there's no way the Giants are going to win. But I made this decision before that news dropped, and I picked the Dolphins as well. I mean, I think the Dolphins are just a better team, straight up. And I mean, the Dolphins aren't anything spectacular, but the Giants are pretty bad. And it's not hard to be better than a pretty bad team. So I'm going to go with the Dolphins. I think Tua gets hated on too much. I hope that he has a good game.
All right. And the last game we've got here, Patriots at Bills. I'm going to go with the Patriots. They have looked really good. And they might, if they keep playing like this, they might be the team to beat in the AFC. I mean, Mac Jones is having a stellar year. Their defense is just stout. That it's hard to beat the Patriots. You think, oh, you got a chance. They don't look that great. They don't do things spectacular, and suddenly they're beating you by 20, 30 points. And they are not apologetic about it either. They play clean football. They play smart and defensive heavy. And I think the Bills, while they did beat the Saints this past week on Thanksgiving by a pretty good margin, it's going to be really tough to run that offense against that defense. And the Bills have been very up and down this year. So
Yes, they have.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say that the Patriots are the way to go on this one. Chelsea, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm reluctantly also picking the Patriots in this game, but I really wanted to type the Bills just to spite the Patriots, right? But unfortunately, I could not. It is in Buffalo, though. So, but honestly, it being in Buffalo, I'd say if it's a snow game, I'd give the advantage to the home team. But really, you can't because their run game has been mediocre once again. Last year, during the offseason of this podcast, I said the Bills want to compete for a Super Bowl. They need a starting running back who is actually decent, who can actually compete the entire year, who's not up and down, who's not hot and cold, but is at least steady the entire year. And you know what they don't have? A steady running back. They have 3 running backs that are all hot and cold, and normally they all go cold at the same time. So on the off chance that it's a snow game in Buffalo, I would still give the advantage to New England. I mean, New England has like 8 running backs. I don't even know all of their names, but they have like 8 of them. So it's like, I mean, I think Josh Allen is pretty obviously a better quarterback than Mac Jones, but the way that Josh Allen has been playing, he just hasn't looked good. He's just made really bad decisions. His team hasn't really done that much to help him out either. So he feels like he has to carry, right? And on top of that, they lost Tre'Davious White for the year, which is really, really bad if you're a Bills fan, because he's one of the best players on your defense, let alone on your team. So that's a ginormous loss for the Bills. I am going to give it to the Patriots, but that's not to say I don't think that the Bills can split the series, because the Patriots go play at the Bills. They play the Colts, right? And then they play the Bills again. So you want to talk about a gauntlet of 3 games. That's going to be tough for the Patriots. Playing the Bills essentially back to back, I think it's going to be really hard to beat them twice within 3 games. So I don't think that they'll beat the Bills twice, but the way that they're playing right now, I just can't pick the Bills over them when the Bills have lost to the Jaguars and have gotten blown out by the Colts. And they're too hot and cold. Like, if they want to compete for a Super Bowl, play like you know how to play. Josh Allen, you are a good quarterback. Stop throwing it into triple coverage. Just take the sack, bro. It's okay. You don't have to be Superman every play. You trying to be Superman is half of what is losing your team games. So if you don't do that, maybe you'll win games. I can't pick the Bills after seeing how they've looked the past couple of weeks. I have to go reluctantly, I preface, with the Patriots.
All right, well, there you have it. That's our Week 13 game picks. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for our episode. So, Chelsea, do you mind doing our outro?
Sure thing, Chris. So, hey guys, thanks for listening. Tune back in next Wednesday for more content. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at _LC_football_ and on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Launch Codes Football. I'm Chelsea.
And my name's Chris.
And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.
Later.